And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. We're starting things out looking at the sun and colorized magnetogram as a geomagnetic unrest condition strikes the Earth. A coronal mass ejection striking right now. Also, geomagnetic storm forecasted. We'll get to all the data on it. Also, another active region rising here. Two sunspot groups, 2822 and 2823. Here's some more imagery of the closest star. It's 304 angstroms ionized helium. There also is a coronal hole wind stream on the way, folks. So we're expecting a couple of days of geomagnetic unrest and geomagnetic storm conditions just forecasted by NOAA. So NOAA has increased the alert level here. Patrons would already be aware that we've seen geomagnetic unrest conditions strike. And we'll show you the signal from the coronal mass ejection momentarily. First, another video here from the SDO, 171 angstroms. Lots more information to blast through here. Here's what's going on in the solar system. And there's where things will be in 1 week. Here's a star chart. If you're up before dawn and you have a clear sky and a view of the ecliptic, you may see Saturn and Jupiter rising ahead of the sun. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux at 76. And here's a 1 year chart of the radio flux. It's this black line. The upper chromosphere and lower corona outputs radio frequency, especially in the frequency of 2800 megahertz. The red line below here is the sunspot number. And we've seen the coronal mass ejection arrive early here. So NOAA was not expecting geomagnetic unrest conditions until 2100 universal time. We saw it strike early, more like 700 universal time. So we can expect a continued period of geomagnetic unrest here, moving back the warning times a little earlier. Also, we see an earthquake lull. We haven't seen a 7 magnitude quake since the 20th of March. So earthquake lulls typically end in earthquakes. And when we sort by magnitude, here's what's going on currently. We saw some in the 5 magnitude range, nothing over a 6 magnitude over the past 24, a couple 5.7s. Let's go up the list. Some deep quakes also struck in the past 24 hours here, such as this 4.5 at Chile, 4.5 magnitude at 111 kilometers. Also a 4.3 only 5 minutes later. Also a 5.4 at Papua New Guinea. That was also at 117 kilometers depth. And we'll just scroll up the list here. Here's a 5.7 deep quake at the Philippines. That at 109 kilometers depth. Also a 5.6 at El Salvador. And I would note this 2,300 meter above sea level earthquake underneath the southern flank of Mauna Loa at about 7,000 feet of altitude. Most likely a magmatic quake there. Continuing on to check out the list of volcanoes. I'm wondering what's erupting. Mount Ibu at Indonesia has been exploding, producing a 6,000-foot ash plume. Semeru on the Isle of East Java, 14,000-foot ash plume from Semeru as it explodes. Dakono also erupting, 8,000-foot ash plume as it produces continuous volcanic ash emissions. Pacaya, effusive explosive strombolian activity and lava fountaining. And lava flow fronts stretched more than 2,300 meters from the location of the caldera. Fuego in Guatemala also exploding, flight level 170. It's a 17,000-foot ash plume. Pacaya in Peru exploding, 24,000-foot ash plume. And Novatos de Chilean producing continuous ash emissions. A great reminder from smAsho to not pole vault the caldera. And this public service message brought to you at massive personal risk and expense from smAsho. We see some minor flaring here from the closest star. Here is the 3-day chart of the GOES X-ray flux. Here's the proton flux. No significant strikes on that. As we forecasted, no major strikes from the coronal mass ejection. Here's the GOES magnetometer over the past 3 days. Fairly smooth curves there on the GOES magnetometer. And let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet. You can see Earth potential field surface source line down here in orange, solidly in a South Pole current sheet at the moment. Here's another view of the same data. It's the line of sight ecliptic plane field plot. It also shows you the solar magnetogram. Here's a line of sight coronal hole plot. You can see some coronal holes associated with the south solar polar region. It also shows you the sun's B field in blue. Next, we'll take a look at sunspot groups and coronal holes. Sunspot 2823 has degraded over the past 24 hours. It is still a beta-class sunspot, although the leading umbra is looking very degraded. It may become an alpha-class sunspot today. Sunspot 2822 is a little bit more complex yet. The likelihood of significant flares still there from sunspot 2822. And the KP index is actually at 4 while we made the video, so this has yet to update. The KP has jumped up to 4. So we'll take a look at the real-time solar wind to show you this signal. And right here, you see this signal right here. This is the moment of the coronal mass ejection striking. You can see this change in the plasma temperature, which is the green line at the bottom. Sudden change in the speed and the density of the solar wind, also a shift in the BTBZ. So that's the coronal mass ejection striking right there. Density made it up to about 40 protons per cubic centimeter. Speed made it up to about 460 kilometers per second. That's all subsided a little bit. The initial shock wave, current conditions more like 20 protons per cubic centimeter, 440 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed. Coronal mass ejection, folks. Next, taking a look at the magnetohydrodynamic pressure, and you're going to see this uptick strike here. You're going to see a visualization based on the space weather modeling framework, and there is the arrival of the coronal mass ejection. I'll bring that back to the moment of the strike here for your viewing pleasure. So here you can see that coming in right at about 6:45 universal time. That sudden increase in magnetohydrodynamic pressure from that increase in the solar wind density and speed, sending the Earth into geomagnetic unrest conditions. And again, there is a geomagnetic storm condition forecasted. Next, looking at ground magnetic perturbations here. We can also expect to see some enhanced aurora as a result of this period of geomagnetic unrest. There you can see that strike coming in just before 7 o'clock. Some geomagnetic ground perturbations, folks. And since it's a polar excursion, we show the data daily. By the way, we do regularly stream live to Twitch as well, twitch.tv/smashamash. Thanks to our YouTube subscribers and our BitChute subscribers. Exclusive content on all of our sites. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Check out our own website, smashamash.com. Smashamash.org will redirect you. Check out our merch. Check out our social media links. Let us know in the comments what your favorite social media is. And let's blast through a cosmology segment. Today's random number is 1008, which coincides with a galaxy, Galaxy 3C446, which is a Bia Lacertae type of active galactic nucleus. And that basically means it is a full spectrum oscillating amount of electromagnetic radiation reaching Earth from this particular galaxy. 3C446. It looks elliptical, and it has to do with the orientation. Let's take a look. This is infrared light, by the way. That's the 2 mass. Take a look at it on the Pan-STARRS for a little higher optical resolution there. And let's see if it shows up in blue light as well. There it is on the DSS2. And we'll go back to the 2 mass. There it is in infrared light. It's heat being emanated from a distant galaxy. The distant galaxy known as 4C592. 4C -05.92. Anyway, there are the X-ray emissions from it, and that number 1008 coincided with an object at the Neil Gorell Swift Observatory. That's why we picked the random number 1008 to talk about that. Now, let's also talk about Gegenschein. Gegenschein is the zodiacal light that we see on the ecliptic plane in the darkest parts of night. If you have a very, very clear sky, such as they do at El Teide, Spain. This is the El Teide Observatory that we regularly show on the videos the data from. It is part of the National Sunspot Observatory. You've also got a meteor showing up here. And this right here, this is the Gegenschein. So this is the zodiacal light reflected by dust, and it's only visible in very dark parts of the world where there's little light pollution. That's the astronomy picture of the day. If you want to look that up yourself, check out apod.nasa.gov. apod.nasa.gov. Also, an interesting article on phys.org here about Alphane waves showing up in the sun's photosphere. So this is pretty important stuff here, folks. The helioseismicity of Alphane waves. And Alphane waves are a type of waves associated with electrical current and magnetic fields and the relationship therein. I won't spend a lot of time on this as there's still lots more stuff to cover today. This phys.org article in the Astronomy and Space section may be of interest to our viewers, and that's today's Cosmology segment. We talk about heliophysics on the regs on our Cosmology segments, as the sun is not fully understood, and since the sun is the Rosetta Stone of all cosmology, we talk about heliophysics in terms of cosmology, since the sun is the Rosetta Stone of all cosmology. That's why we, put it in our Cosmology segments. Solar studies are part of cosmology, folks. Next, looking at a diagram of the Van Allen belts. Distances are listed in miles. Feel free to pause the video as we move into the realm of electron flux. Here's a one-year chart of the relativistic electrons surrounding Earth. Here's a 3-day chart, and we're expecting this to be quite low here over the next couple of days. We don't see any charging hazards, nor do we really expect any until the coronal mass ejection and coronal hole wind streams subside. Here is the forecast model, and we're expecting a small downtick in the electron flux. And so is NOAA. There's the forecast model. The green boxes are the forecast. The yellow diamonds are the observation. Next, looking at the total electron content forecast. This is showing you the full electron density all the way from a GPS satellite to your handset. And we've been seeing quite chaotic belts here. Once again, seeing high levels of electron flux at nighttime and low levels of electron flux in the daytime. In other words, some chaotic Van Allen belts surrounding planet Earth right now. And next we'll look at just one slice instead of the total air column. How about an ionogram? So here's the ionogram. This is just one slice of the atmosphere at about 300 kilometers of altitude. And each tick of the clock here represents 15 minutes, and the ionosphere is looking anomalous once again. And just give this a moment to play through, folks. We'll bring up the latest image before we move on. Latest image coming through at 8 o'clock Universal Time. And here's just a diagram of the atmosphere. We show this daily to show where the F flare is located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. And let's go into the realm of meteorology. Here are the surface winds of the Western world. Let's move it to the jet stream. Here's the 250 hectopascal winds. And look at how chaotic the jet stream is here north of America. Chaotic jet stream flows here. Here are the jet streams of the eastern world. And we'll also show you the surface winds. There are surface winds of the east. Some chaotic winds south of Australia continue. Nice 90-degree bend in the winds right there as well. We saw some terrestrial lightning here near Lake Pontchartrain while I did show prep. And let's show the global lightning map here, lightningmaps.org. So some lightning in the southern Atlantic there, as well as around the Gulf Coast. Here's the NASA GOES lightning mapper. Quite a lot of lightning here around the Gulf Coast over the past few days. Next, I'd like to thank our patrons, a true source of funding for the content. Please consider funding us. Patreon.com/smAsho. You get the earliest alerts, all kinds of other graphics and multimedia. Thanks, patrons. Thanks, patrons, new and old. As the only thing that stays the same is the channel staying in a state of flux. Evolve or die, folks. Evolve or die. Next, looking at pressure cells here on windy.com. Here's where pressure cells are now. And we'll advance this into tomorrow. This is the Euro forecast for pressure. Here's where we expect pressure to be at 12 noon Eastern Daylight Time tomorrow. Thursday, May 13th. Next, a U.S. Doppler radar map. And we see some heavy storms here just south of the Gulf Coast. And some heavy storms also moving from Mississippi into Alabama, soon to move into Georgia, also South Carolina. Some snow continuing to fall in places like Colorado, New Mexico, Idaho, and Montana. Also some snow falling apparently here in Vermont and New Hampshire and some in New York as well. Here's what's going on in the cloud layer. It's too dark to see them, so we use the 3.9 nanometer NASA GOES interactive weather satellite. Here's the water vapor. Again, there's the cloud layer. And I would note that this is going to stagnate here, as this moisture has a very weak impulse behind it. And once again, here's the U.S. Doppler radar map. Here's the cloud layer. And here is the water vapor map. Let's get into bonus features. Let's go back to El Teide, shall we? And here's the latest hydrogen alpha imagery from the El Teide Observatory. Again, two sunspot groups, 2822 and 2823. This active region here, not yet a sunspot. We did not see umbre when we did show prep. Let's take a look by hitting refresh and show you the high-resolution colorized magnetogram, as well as the high-resolution intensitygram. And you can see sunspot 2823 has degraded. That's now an alpha-class sunspot. Sunspot 2822 has degraded as well. It's still beta-class, but it has also degraded. And again, this area over here, not a sunspot. What in the heck? All right. So here's the magnetogram. And you can see only one umbra there associated with sunspot 2823. It's only North Pole now. And this one still does have two umbrae. There still is some significant possibility for significant solar flares, especially out of sunspot 2822. And I've got too many tabs open. Let's close things out with some imagery of sunspot 2822 in 94 angstroms. Some minor flaring coming out of it. And last but not least, we'll show the southern hemisphere, the degradation of sunspot 2823, and a new active region there in the southeast. Thanks for tuning into the Daily Space Weather, folks. Remember to stare at the sun. Attempt to understand the physics. Don't drink it. If you do, don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back.